Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome back to my ledger. In 40 years on the bench, I learned that the most dangerous predators are rarely the ones who growl. They are the ones who smile, the ones who wrap their venom in charm and their greed in the language of love. This is the story of such a man and the wallet he should have never left behind. Before we open this case file, I want to thank you for your continued presence here. This channel is a testament to the idea that quiet preparation will always triumph over loud arrogance. If you agree, please take a moment to subscribe and press the like button. And do continue to tell me what city you are listening from. It is a profound joy. Now let us begin. My younger sister, Clara, is the kindest soul I have ever known. Where I am pragmatic and perhaps a bit cynical from my years in the courtroom, she has always been an optimist, a woman who chooses to see the good in people, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. She is, in every sense, a truly gentle spirit. Her husband of 45 years, a good and steady man named Robert, passed away 2 years ago. The loss hollowed her out. She was adrift in a sea of grief and loneliness, rattling around in the big family home they had shared. I made a point to call her every single day, just to hear her voice, to make sure she was not sinking beneath the waves. Then, about 6 months ago, the tone of her voice began to change. The fragile sadness was replaced by a youthful, almost giddy excitement. "Walter," she said one afternoon, her voice practically bubbling over the phone line, "I've met someone." My heart, I must admit, sank a little. His name, she told me, was Mr. Alastair Finch. A retired international businessman, she said. Charming, worldly, and several years her junior. He had swept her off her feet. They had met at a local charity gala. He had, in her words, rescued her from a boring conversation, and they had talked for the rest of the night. 2 weeks later, she called again. "Walter," she said, and I could hear her blushing through the phone. "We've done something rather impulsive. We got married." Married? After knowing him for a handful of weeks? The judge in me began to stir. The alarm bells in my head, long dormant, began to ring a slow, steady peal. "That's wonderful news, Clara," I said, forcing a warmth into my voice that I did not feel. "I can't wait to meet the man who has made you so happy." "You will," she chirped. "We're having a small dinner party on Saturday, just us. I want my 2 favorite men to finally meet." I arrived at her home on Saturday evening, a bottle of good wine in hand. The house looked different. The comfortable, slightly cluttered warmth of her previous life was gone. In its place were sharp, modern decorations that felt cold and impersonal. And then he appeared in the doorway, Mr. Finch. He was exactly as she had described. Tanned, handsome, with perfect teeth, and a suit that cost more than my first car. He shook my hand with a grip that was a little too firm, a little too practiced. "Judge Harrison," he said, his smile never quite reaching his eyes, "it is an absolute honor. I have heard so much about you." I had a feeling he had not, and I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my bones that this was not a social call. It was an appraisal, and I was the one being appraised. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle interrogation. Mr. Finch held court at Clara's dining table, pouring wine with a flourish and regaling us with tales of his business in places like Dubai and Singapore. The stories were grand, but they were thin on details. They were the kind of stories designed to impress, not to inform. Clara just watched him, her eyes shining with adoration. She looked happier than I had seen her in years, and for that, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be wrong. But a judge learns to listen not just to what is said, but to what is not said. And Mr. Finch was leaving a great deal unsaid. "So, Walter," he said, turning his polished smile on me, "Clara tells me you spent your life in the courtroom, a fascinating, if somewhat dusty profession." I smiled back. "The dust of the law has a way of settling things permanently," I replied. "It is very reliable." I noticed throughout the dinner that whenever I asked Clara a direct question, Finch would answer for her. "How have you been feeling, Clara?" I'd ask. "She's been wonderful," Finch would interject smoothly. "A new lease on life. We're thinking of taking a trip to Tuscany next month." Clara would just nod and smile, content to let him speak for them both. He was subtly, expertly erasing her. He was positioning himself as the sole narrator of their life together. It was a classic tactic of a controlling personality, a red flag the size of a courthouse banner. But Clara, so starved for affection and companionship, saw it only as a sign of his devotion. Towards the end of the evening, as we were having coffee, Finch made his first real probe. "Clara was telling me about her portfolio," he said casually, swirling the brandy in his glass. "A bit old-fashioned, mostly bonds and blue-chip stocks. In my world, Walter, you have to be aggressive. You have to leverage your assets to see real growth." "The first lesson one learns in estate law, Alistair," I said, using his first name for the first time, "is that the tortoise almost always outlives the hare. Clara's portfolio was designed for security, not for speed." My tone was pleasant, but my message was clear. Stay away from her finances. Finch's smile tightened for a fraction of a second, but he recovered instantly. Of course," he said smoothly. "Just thinking of her future, our future." He stood up, signaling the end of the evening. He had tested my defenses and found them solid. He would have to find another way in. As I was leaving, Clara walked me to the door. "Isn't he wonderful, Walter?" she whispered, her eyes pleading for my approval. I looked at my sister, at her hopeful, happy face. How could I tell her that her wonderful new husband had the cold, predatory eyes of every con man I had ever sent to prison? "He is certainly confident," I said, which was the most honest and least hurtful thing I could offer. I hugged her goodbye, and as I walked to my car, a deep, cold dread settled in my stomach. This was not just a bad marriage. This was a hostile takeover, and my sister was the asset being acquired. The investigation had to begin in earnest. In the weeks that followed, my daily calls to Clara became a frustrating exercise. Finch almost always answered her phone now. "Clara's resting, Walter," he would say, his voice a smooth wall of helpfulness. Or, "She's in the garden, can't come to the phone." Or, "We're just heading out, I'll have her call you back." She never did. He was building a fence around her, brick by brick, cutting her off from her old life, from me. He wanted to be the only voice she heard. When I did manage to speak with her, she sounded distant, her conversation filled with phrases and opinions that sounded less like her and more like him. "Walter, Alistair says my old car is a death trap. He thinks I should get a new one." Alistair says we should sell the silver. It's just collecting dust." Then came the call I had been dreading. It was Finch. "Walter, good news," he announced. "My big project has finally come through. A resort development in Costa Rica. The investors are all in." I remained silent. I knew what was coming next. "The thing is," he continued, "to finalize the deal, we need to show a bit more liquidity. It's a formality. We were thinking the simplest thing would be to leverage the house, put it up as collateral." There it was, the end game. He wasn't just after her savings anymore. He was after the house itself, the home Robert had built for her. "That sounds like a significant financial decision, Alistair," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. "Clara and I should probably discuss it." "No need to bother her with the details," he said quickly. "She trusts my judgment completely. In fact, she's already agreed. We just need your blessing as the head of the family." The sheer audacity of it left me momentarily speechless. He was using her love for him as a weapon, and my affection for her as a shield. "I will not give my blessing to a blind transaction," I said, the ice returning to my voice. "I will need to see a full prospectus, and I will need to speak with Clara alone." I decided I would not wait for his permission. The next afternoon, I drove to their house unannounced. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in. The house was quiet. I found Finch in the living room, on the phone, his back to me. He was laughing. "Don't worry," he was saying into the phone. "The old man is a pushover. Thinks he's still a judge. Another week and the house is ours." I did not say a word. I simply stood there. After a moment, his hair on the back of his neck must have prickled. He turned around slowly. When he saw me, the color drained from his face. "Walter," he stammered, quickly ending his call. I didn't hear you come in." "Clearly," I said. "I came to speak with my sister." Just then, Clara came down the stairs. Seeing the tension between us, her face clouded with anxiety. "Walter, what a surprise! Is everything all right?" Finch, seeing his audience, regained his composure instantly. He put an arm around Clara. "Everything is fine, my love," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Your brother was just offering his unsolicited advice on our financial affairs." He then turned to me, and with my sister standing right there, he smiled a cold, dismissive smile. "With all due respect, Walter," he said, his voice soft but venomous, "you're a meddling old fool who doesn't understand how the real world works anymore. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a lunch reservation." He had called me a fool in my sister's home. It was the final mistake, and it was a fatal one. I looked from Finch's smug face to my sister's worried one. She looked torn, confused, wanting to defend both her brother and her new husband. I simply nodded. "My apologies for the intrusion," I said, my voice betraying no emotion. "Enjoy your lunch." I turned and left without another word. A strategic retreat is not a surrender. It is a prelude to a more decisive engagement. As I drove home, his words echoed in my mind. A meddling old fool. He had not just insulted me, he had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of his opponent. He believed he was in a battle of wills with a sentimental old man. He did not realize he had just declared war on a judge. And a judge's battlefield is not the living room. It is the evidence locker. Providence, it seems, has a wonderful sense of irony. The very next day, my phone rang. It was Clara, and she sounded frantic. "Walter, thank God you answered. Alistair is in a terrible state. He's gone to a big meeting downtown, and he's just realized he grabbed your coat by mistake when you left yesterday. He has your old tweed jacket, and his is still here." I looked at the coat rack by my door, and there it was, a sleek, modern black cashmere coat that did not belong to me. It felt alien in my quiet home. "Don't worry, Clara," I said calmly. "These things happen. I'll drive over now and we can swap them." "Oh, thank you," she said, relieved. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "He's mostly worried about his wallet. It's in the inside pocket. He said it has everything in it." Click. The final piece of the lock fell into place. "Tell him not to worry," I said, my voice a mask of reassurance. "I will bring it directly. It will be perfectly safe." When I arrived, Clara was waiting anxiously at the door. We swapped the coats. I could feel the weight of the wallet in the inner pocket of his cashmere jacket. It felt heavy, dense with secrets. Pause, 1.5 seconds. "He called 3 times, Clara said, wringing her hands. "He seems so worried." "I'm sure it's fine," I said, patting her hand. "Tell him I have it." I did not go straight home. I went to my office, the small room I still rent downtown, a place where I keep my old law books and my thoughts. I locked the door, I sat at my desk, and I placed the wallet on the green felt blotter under the desk lamp. It was a beautiful wallet, alligator skin, obscenely expensive, the wallet of a man trying very hard to look rich. I hesitated for a moment. This was a line, a private space. But then I heard his voice in my head, "Meddling old fool," and I remembered the fear in my sister's eyes. This was no longer a matter of etiquette. It was a matter of discovery. I opened the wallet. Inside, it was exactly as I expected. A platinum credit card, a VIP card for an exclusive golf club, a few large bills, all the trappings of a successful man. But a con man's story is never in the headlines, it is in the footnotes. I began to check the small, hidden pockets. And then I found it. Tucked behind his driver's license was a small, folded piece of paper. A receipt. The paper was creased and worn, as if looked at many times. It was not for a fancy suit or an expensive dinner. It was from a store called Babies and Beyond in a town in Nevada I'd never heard of. The items listed were simple: a child's car seat, a box of diapers, and a pink baby blanket. The date was from 2 weeks ago. I stared at the receipt under the desk lamp. Babies and Beyond, Nevada. A pink baby blanket. The name Finch was a performance. The expensive suit was a costume. This small, crumpled piece of paper, this felt real. This felt like the truth. My heart ached for my sister. But the judge in me took over. The time for emotion was later. Now was the time for facts. I put the receipt aside and continued my methodical search of the wallet. In a tight, hidden flap behind the credit card slots, my fingers felt the edge of something else. A small, square photograph. I slid it out. It was a cheap, glossy photo from a mall portrait studio. On it, A woman I had never seen before was smiling. She was younger than Clara, with tired eyes but a hopeful smile. And on her lap sat a small toddler, and in her arms, wrapped in a pink blanket, was a newborn baby. Standing behind them, with his hand on her shoulder, smiling like a proud father, was Alistair Finch. The air went out of my lungs. It was all there, a complete secret life in a single hidden photograph. This wasn't just a man with debts. This was a man with a second family, a family he was funding by draining the life savings of my lonely, grieving sister. The meddling old fool now understood everything. I carefully placed the photo and the receipt back into the wallet exactly as I had found them. I drove to Clara's house and returned the wallet to her, my face a mask of calm neutrality. "He's been calling non-stop," she said, relieved. "Thank you, Walter." I just nodded. "Of course, Clara. Anything for family." The next morning, I did not call the police. A public scandal would humiliate Clara, and a criminal case could be difficult to prove. Finch was a professional liar. No, this required a different approach, not a cannon, but a scalpel. I needed undeniable proof, delivered at a moment of maximum impact. I called my old lawyer friend, Sam Black. "Sam," I said, my voice quiet, "I have a new case for you. It's a matter of discovery. I need a discreet background check on a gentleman named Alistair Finch." I gave him the name of the town in Nevada from the receipt. I told him what I suspected. Sam, who had seen more human ugliness than most, just whistled softly. "He's a vampire, Walter," Sam said, "living off 2 families at once." "He is," I agreed, "and I need you to find the public records, a marriage certificate, birth certificates for the children, anything that is a legal, undeniable fact." "Consider it done," Sam said. "Give me 48 hours. While Sam worked, I played my part. I called Finch. "Alistair," I said, my voice full of practiced apology, "I must confess I overstepped my bounds the other day. I would be honored if you would allow me to host a small dinner party for you and Clara as a gesture of goodwill. Her birthday is next week. It would be the perfect occasion." There was a pause. Then his smooth, confident voice returned. He thought he had won. The old fool was finally bending the knee. "Walter," he said warmly, "I'd be delighted. An excellent idea." The trap was now set. The venue was chosen, and the guest of honor had just cheerfully confirmed his attendance at his own execution. For the next week, I was a man with a singular purpose. I spoke with my sister, Clara, every day, playing the part of the apologetic brother. "I'm so looking forward to the party, Clara. I want to make things right with Alistair. He's made you so happy." Each word was a carefully placed stone in the path leading to his downfall. Clara was overjoyed. She believed she had finally brokered peace between the 2 men in her life. She chattered on about the menu, the guest list, just a few of their close friends, and how wonderful it was that we were all going to be one happy family. The irony was a bitter pill, but I swallowed it for her sake. 48 hours after my call, a secured email arrived from my lawyer, Sam. The subject line was a single word: obtained. Inside was a collection of digital files that made my blood run cold, even as the judge in me felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The evidence was even more damning than I had imagined. Sam had found it all. A copy of a marriage license from Clark County, Nevada, issued to one Alistair Finch and a woman named Brenda Gable, dated 3 years prior. He found the birth certificate for a 2-year-old boy and another for a 6-month-old girl, father's name on both Alistair Finch. But Sam, being Sam, had dug deeper. He had found property records. Mr. Finch had recently purchased a large suburban house in that Nevada town. He had put down a 20% deposit. The date of the deposit was just 2 weeks after Clara had liquidated a portion of her stock portfolio on Alistair's expert advice. The final document was the sickening. It was a credit report. It showed Alistair had a mountain of debt from failed business ventures and online gambling sites. It also showed a regular monthly wire transfer from his account to Brenda Gable's. He wasn't just supporting his other family, he was using my sister's life savings to pay for his secret life while his own finances were in ruins. He was a parasite in a cashmere coat. I downloaded every document. I drove to a print shop across town where no one would know me. I printed each document on heavy, high-quality bond paper. A marriage license, 2 birth certificates, the deed to the Nevada house, the bank statements. Back in my study, I assembled what I thought of as my exhibits. I placed them in a neat stack. Then I took out a beautiful hand-carved wooden box where Eleanor used to keep her most precious letters. I carefully placed the stack of papers inside. This would not be a folder. This would be a gift. The day of the party arrived. I spent the morning preparing. I did not feel nervous. I felt the same calm focus I used to feel before a major trial. I wrapped the wooden box in elegant gold birthday paper and tied it with a silk ribbon. It looked beautiful. It felt like a time bomb. I arrived at Clara's house that evening. Finch greeted me at the door like a long-lost brother, his arms slung around my shoulders. "Walter, so glad you could make it. All is forgiven," he said, his voice booming with false magnanimity. "The past is the past," I replied, handing him the beautifully wrapped box. "This is for Clara, a celebration of her new expanded family." He had no idea how true that statement was. Finch took the heavy box from me, a look of mild surprise on his face. "A little weighty for a birthday gift, isn't it, Walter?" he joked. He placed it on a table with the other presents. Throughout the cocktail hour, I watched him. He was the perfect host, gliding through the room, refilling glasses, charming Clara's old friends, who were all as taken with him as she was. He was a master performer. Dinner was served. Finch insisted I sit at the head of the table, opposite him. "The 2 patriarchs of the family," he announced with a grand gesture, and everyone chuckled. I simply inclined my head, playing my part. I ate my meal slowly. I was in no hurry. The main event was yet to come. After the main course, as dessert was being served, Finch tapped his glass with a fork. "Friends," he began, his voice smooth and practiced, "if I may have your attention for a moment." He stood up, glass in hand. He looked at Clara, his eyes shining with what appeared to be pure adoration. It was a magnificent performance. "I just want to say," he continued, "how truly blessed I feel. To have found this incredible woman, my beautiful Clara, at this stage of my life, it is a miracle." He paused for effect. "She has brought a light into my world I thought was lost forever. And I promise you all, I will spend the rest of my days ensuring her happiness, her security, and our shared prosperity." He raised his glass. "To Clara, my wife, my partner, my everything." "To Clara," everyone echoed. I raised my glass with them, my face a mask of pleasant neutrality. As he sat down, basking in the warm applause, Finch leaned toward me. "See, old man," he whispered with a triumphant smirk, "that's how it's done." It was my turn. "Alistair, those were beautiful words," I said, my voice carrying just enough to quiet the table. "And in the spirit of celebrating your new family, I believe it's time for Clara to open her gift from me." I gestured to the heavy, beautifully wrapped wooden box. Finch smiled, suspecting nothing. Clara, delighted, brought the box to the table. "Oh, Walter, it's so heavy. What could it be?" she said, her hands fumbling with the silk ribbon. "It's a family history," I said simply, "something to commemorate this new chapter." Finch nodded in approval, completely oblivious. Clara lifted the heavy lid of the wooden box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was not jewelry, not some silver trinket, but a single neat stack of legal documents. A look of confusion crossed her face. "Walter, what is this?" she asked, picking up the top sheet of paper. It was the Nevada marriage license. I watched her eyes scan the names, Alistair Finch and Brenda Gable. I watched her hand begin to tremble. She picked up the next sheet, a child's birth certificate. Father, Alistair Finch. She looked across the table at her smiling, confident husband, then back at the papers, and her face, her beautiful, kind face, slowly began to crumble. "What is it, my love?" Finch asked, his smile finally beginning to falter as he saw the look on her face. Clara didn't answer. She just lifted her gaze to him, her eyes wide with a dawning, unspeakable horror. And she whispered a single question that shattered the silence of the room. "Alistair," she said, her voice a broken whisper, "who is Brenda?" The name hung in the air like smoke. Brenda. Finch's face, which had been a mask of charming confidence just moments before, froze. The smile melted from his lips. I watched the color drain from his face, leaving behind a waxy, pale sheen. He looked at the papers in Clara's trembling hands. He looked at me, and in my calm, steady gaze, he saw not an old fool, but a hangman. Clara's friends, the other guests at the table, were looking back and forth, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. "Clara, my dear, it's a misunderstanding," Finch stammered, attempting one last pathetic performance. "It's a business matter, a joke." "A joke?" Clara's voice was suddenly sharp, laced with a pain so profound it was terrifying. She held up one of the birth certificates. "Is this your idea of a joke, Alistair? This little girl, is she a business matter too?" She threw the papers onto the table. They scattered across the dessert plates, the evidence of his betrayal, laid bare for all to see. Finch didn't answer. He couldn't. He was exposed, cornered, with no lies left to tell. One of Clara's friends, a sharp woman named Martha, picked up the Nevada marriage license. She read it, gasped, and looked at Finch with pure, unadulterated contempt. The room had turned on him completely. He did the only thing a coward can do when the truth arrives. He fled. Without a word, without a look back, he stood up, knocking his chair over, and practically ran from the dining room. A moment later, we heard the front door slam shut, followed by the squeal of tires as he sped away into the night, away from the life he had tried to steal. Clara sat there amidst the wreckage of her birthday party and began to weep, quietly at first, then with deep, wrenching sobs. Her friends gathered around her, comforting her. I walked over and placed my hand on her shoulder. She looked up at me, her eyes full of pain, but also a flicker of gratitude. The predator was gone. The fever had broken. The aftermath was handled quietly and efficiently by my lawyer, Sam. The marriage was annulled on grounds of bigamy and fraud. It was as if it had never happened. We made sure to freeze any joint accounts before Finch could drain them completely. He had already taken a significant amount, but we saved the house, her portfolio, her future. Alastair Finch made one fatal mistake. It was not getting married to two women at once. It was not stealing from my sister. It was not even insulting me. His fatal mistake was his arrogance. He believed he was the smartest man in every room he entered. He never considered that the quiet, meddling old fool in the corner might just be a little bit smarter. He saw my sister's kindness as a resource to be exploited. He saw my age as a sign of weakness. He was a man who understood the price of everything and the value of nothing. His wallet, filled with the symbols of a life he pretended to have, ended up being the very thing that unraveled it all. A truly satisfying irony. Clara is recovering. The hurt is deep, but she is strong. The other day, she started painting again for the first time in years. She says she wants to fill the house with color again. Her color. It seems the ledger for this case is now balanced. Justice, once again, has been served. That is the story of my sister's second husband and the high cost of a careless man's wallet. It is a sad tale in many ways, a story of a good woman's heart being preyed upon by a man with none of his own. But it is also a powerful reminder of a truth I have seen confirmed 1,000 times. The truth is this: liars inevitably become careless. They build a house of cards, and they become so focused on adding new, ever more elaborate layers, they forget to check the foundation. They believe their own performance, and they always leave a piece of evidence behind, a receipt, a photograph, a forgotten wallet. Mr. Finch believed he was a master manipulator. But he was just an amateur magician, and he accidentally showed the audience how the trick was done. He was so blinded by my sister's wealth, he never stopped to consider that her family might have wisdom. And wisdom, my friends, is an asset that can never be leveraged or stolen. This entry in my ledger is now closed. A man who preyed on the vulnerable was exposed by his own carelessness. A good woman, though wounded, has found her strength and her peace again. The scales, which had been tipped so dangerously by greed, have found their balance once more. And now I turn the final verdict over to you, the jury of this channel. This was a painful family matter. Some might say I had no right to open that wallet. that I violated a man's privacy to prove a point. Others might say that when you suspect a predator is harming your family, there are no rules of engagement. What do you think? Was my action justified? Or did I become a meddling old fool in my quest to protect my sister? Please leave your judgment in the comments below. I read every single one, and your collective wisdom is a constant source of education for me. If this story of justice served brought you a measure of satisfaction, I would be deeply grateful if you would press the like button. It is the most powerful signal you can send to the great algorithm in the sky that these kinds of stories matter and deserve to be heard. And if you have not already done so, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. There are many more case files in my ledger, many more stories of arrogance meeting its match, and I would be honored to share them with you in the days to come. Thank you, as always, for the gift of your time. And please do continue to let me know what city, what state, what country you are listening from. To see these stories travel from my quiet study to places like Sydney and Dublin and Mumbai, it is a constant and profound source of joy for an old man. Until we open the ledger again, be well, be wise, and always, always check the fine print. This is Uncle Walter, wishing you a just and peaceful day.